We're here today on our last episode of this series. So we've been doing the SaaS coach, talking all about retention. How do we keep more users, throughout the series? I call it the Bear Hug. And this is the last episode in this series. We have a couple special episodes planned coming up, so I think it's worth keeping an eye out for those, where we're going to be talking about some specific additional tactics that you can take and some strategies that we have in our retention process. I think we'll be talking maybe about the critical path and some other things that we utilize in our process to help customers with retention. So those should be some good episodes, special episodes coming up in the next couple weeks.
We talked a little bit. This is we think a timely series given the nature of everything going on. It's a rough time for a lot of people, a lot of businesses. We know how important it is. It's always important with the software business to retain those users, but right now especially to really hold on to them, to get them in the Bear Hug and keep them there. So we hope you guys are getting value out of this, and we're excited to do a couple special episodes coming up.
Yeah, and since we're at the end, I think it's okay to go back to the beginning, and this whole series is about the concept of reducing churn rate. And churn rate is, the number of users that leave your software on a regular basis. And, the big key with retention is, if we're spending all this money, effort, and time in gaining new users, but then we're losing a percentage of them on a regular basis, that devalues the ROI that we're really getting out of, everything we're spending to acquire new users. And we really have a challenge of scaling a software company if we don't have retention and our churn rate under control. And so this whole series really has been about some different tactics and approaches that companies can take that, I really think even if they just watch through the series, would get a ton of quick tips to make improvements to their retention.
For sure. That's the idea of the series. If you're just tuning in, haven't seen other shows, we try to give you guys deliverables kind of every week, little things, little takeaways. You can chip away a little bit at a time. So,
agreed.
Today is the 12th principle, I believe.
And we're talking about, don't let them leave, or don't wait until their bags are packed. And so this is really about that concept that, we don't want to worry about retention or someone losing, after they've hit that cancel button or, filled out that survey to say why they were canceling. We really want to be proactive rather than reactive. And we talk about that a lot in almost everything, but that's what today's episode is really about, is that we can do all these tactics, but there are some ways that we can really be predictive in understanding whether people are going to leave and making sure that we're taking steps to mitigate that way before they actually hit that cancel button.
Yeah, it's facing the reality of it, looking at some of those indicators and triggers and being proactive. So
agreed. So the first place is obviously data. One of the things for me is we had a whole episode about data and talking about metrics, especially with retention. When it comes to this, one of the things that you can do is, if you get good at really interpreting and tracking data and marking different behaviors, especially looking at users that are canceling, and then going back and segmenting them into an audience and really looking at their analytics, you can start to get predictive indicators that someone might cancel. It could be something that even as much as they're visiting their account page more often, because they want to see, where does my account status stand, what kind of billing do I have. Maybe you have a link that goes out to, kind of the terms of service, and you can see in the analytics that someone in their account is clicking around and learning about some of that info. That is a huge indicator that something's happening. Another could be just lack of usage. Are they not logging in? And maybe it's been 5 days and you notice that once somebody hasn't logged in for 5 days, most users that cancel had that same behavior. And so we've got this opportunity with data that if we're looking at it in a different perspective, we can really become this predictive business that can then take that data and make changes and improvements or outreach or whatever it might be to stop people from taking that step into canceling.
Yeah, and I think along these lines, looking at the data, that's going to provide you with, you're going to be able to recognize patterns. There's always going to be a life cycle of your average user. People aren't going to stay forever.
Right.
But there's going to be the ones, I think, where you want to try to mitigate is where people are leaving early on. It might be that they're just not understanding all the value that's there. They're not maximizing the utilization of the application. So that's, you'll start to see, as you mentioned, using the data, you'll start to see little patterns of here's where they, these are some things that happen typically before people drop off. And those, I think, are the ones we want to focus on.
Yeah, we can leverage automation to do this. You know, automation is a great tool that sends emails based off of triggers. And so if someone visits a certain page, we can automate a message. You know, if there's some sort of other activity or lack of activity, we can automatically have it send. So we have the opportunity to not only leverage and create predictive data, but also to automate some of the processes for outreach. And so if someone isn't logged in for 5 days, it's kind of a message of, you know, are you running into trouble, or, you know, this, can we help? Or if someone visits the account page, maybe it's a chat that pops up and says, you know, do you have any questions? I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that you can do to, again, predict and react, but do that in a proactive way rather than, you know, after the fact.
For sure. Another proactive tip?
Yeah, just making sure that you're watching expired credit cards. This is obviously a signal, and really the challenge here is that, you know, an expired credit card, if it processes and doesn't go through, you're not going to get the money, and the likelihood that they may come back and not renew, it significantly increases. So, you know, keeping track of that data and then being able to make outreach ahead of time, a month or 2 months before someone's credit card expires, to say, hey, update your data. You know, as they log into the portal, a little pop-up says, you know, you've only got 12 days left, please update this. Just helps to stop, again, potential cancelizations, or even, you know, lack of canceling, just letting things expire.
And I think that's a good point there, because in some cases, people may not, it's not an active cancellation where they're saying, I don't want this anymore. It's like, oh, well, I didn't get to it, so I'm just going to let it go. And if it was still active, they probably would, in a lot of cases, a lot of those people will let those, you know, subscriptions recur, and so you're just losing out. So those are ones you want to address and be proactive about it.
Yeah, and you'd rather ask somebody to update that information before you're saying that their account is, you know, closed or put on hold. And so, you know, getting that done up front is a much better solution. Don't wait till renewal to ask for updated information.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, again, just being, you know, proactive and getting in front of your user. I think it's also, you know, getting them into the application and using it. In some cases, there's people that are just, maybe they started using it early on, then they scaled back. Anytime you have outreach, we sometimes talk about that. Every marketing touch that you have is an opportunity to kind of win or lose a customer. So you want to think about your approach as well, and maybe talk about some of the new features, some of the value when you reach out to them. Don't just say, hey, go update your credit card. Talk about all the great things that are in there. If you haven't been in recently, maybe you want to take a look at this or that. So reach out, be proactive, get them in there, give them a reason to be excited about looking around again.
Yeah, makes sense. So talk a little bit about arranging exit interviews, and even before they're gone.
Yeah, I think getting that user feedback is super critical. We've talked about that before, but there are going to be people that leave. And so I think it's important to capture that information. And this could be done through customer support. I think if you have good customer support in place, you're getting feedback every time there's an interaction. So there's a way to rate and leave feedback and whatnot. And sometimes those will be signals of unhappy customers. And so you can get ahead of it there. Other times people are going to cancel, and they have reasons, and you're not going to be able to do anything. And that's okay. But what's valuable is to understand why. It could be they couldn't afford it. It could be they're not using it. It could be they've they had some life event that they no longer need this, whatever the application is. So understanding that's very important, because I think what we want to look for is really find the ones, what can we fix and address? People, I'm out of work, so I can't afford this. Not really anything we can do about that. But the one that says, you know what, it was very valuable back in the last version, but then you guys changed this and not using it as much, or whatever it might be. To understand where the areas are where you can take that feedback and improve the experience or retain those users, that's where it's valuable. And then the idea, I think, looking at your user base and not always waiting for the actual exit to get some of that feedback.
Right.
So do you have any thoughts on that when you can?
Yeah, well, I think, doing the exit interviews, so basically you have two options. You can either have a quick survey, but then some SaaS companies will call and ask questions, get further information. But what it can be is actually a way to help prioritize your predictions. So let's say that 80% of your cancellations, the message and reason that people give is pricing. Mm-hmm. Well, then that in your analytics, that when you're looking at predictive data about, they're paying attention to their account more, they're clicking some of those buttons, maybe they, you can even test that are users hovering over, the downgrade button and things like that, that you need to prioritize the whole aspect of pricing and what you do and how you follow up. That if you're getting those signals and 80% of users leave because of price, not only is that something to look at, but it's also something you can leverage in that whole predictive process as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah. And then, we wouldn't be, talking about trying to reduce retention if we didn't also get a little bit into trying to bring people back.
Yeah.
So this isn't quite, getting into the predictive, proactive versus reactive, but I think, a lot of software companies need to make sure that they're looking at those users that they lost and coming up with some ways to stay in touch, announce new features, find ways to potentially bring them back into the fold. And that's that opportunity with even your, exit interview, that you're finding out the reason, that then maybe they even go into a specific automated sequence based on their reason that you can then follow up. So if it is that pricing piece and 80% of people are leaving via price, they go into an automation sequence that really provides more information about value and what's ROI and case studies, versus if someone leaves because they say, I don't have this right feature or whatever it is, they might go into a different, type of funnel. And so it's really thinking about, not just how do you follow up with people, but how do you build a strategy that's intelligent and uses personalized data to have the right touch points after the fact to increase the likelihood of bringing back lost users.
Yeah, you definitely want to pair that up, so whatever the feedback is or what you know about your users and why they're leaving, people are going to leave for a variety of different reasons, but give them reasons to come back, right? Talk about the new features that have been added. Talk about maybe if there's different packages available for the people who are leaving because of price. And just stay in touch and top of mind, because there are some people that, just leave because they're cutting expenses at their business, or if it's a personal item, but that they liked it, and if you stay top of mind and show that there's still more, still value being delivered and doing even bigger and better things, at some point they may come back around. So I think that top of mind is important, and then as much as you can pair up, personalize it and make it about what we know about them, or what we know on a bigger scale, and talk to those points, you're going to have luck with it. But I think it's important to keep them aware and continue to market to them. They're used, they're still your target audience, even though they've left. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of people that can come back.
Well, we talk about in marketing, and we've done a couple of series on specifically marketing tactics, but the more you personalize, the more you make the messages, the ads, the emails very specific to the ideas, needs, wants, motivations of the individual person, the higher you're going to have conversion rates and the other. These people are really just moving into a different marketing segment but then it can't just be your one marketing segment for lost users. That has to be broken up into subgroups around the purpose and reason. So I think, any company that has a higher churn rate, they shouldn't let those people go entirely, but they also shouldn't, just take a blanket approach to retention with them or trying to bring them back. So
yeah. And that goes to ensure that you're gathering that info and paying attention to your data, because that may not realize it while they're a user in their life cycle, but once they leave, you can look back and understand, and then that can be useful.
Yeah, and that's even an option is, if you're keeping some of this data, that you can have metrics of like which features did they use the most, and is that something you promote? But I think it comes down to there is value in those lost customers, and it may cost less to bring some of them back than to get an entirely new user, but it's going to cost a lot more to bring them back if you're not taking a strategic approach to it.
Great point.
So, and I think that is kind of the wrap up for our entire retention series. Like we mentioned, we're going to have some special episodes coming out that really will get into some of the very specific, unique processes that we use with companies around retention. But at this stage, we want to thank everybody for being part of the series. Go back and check all the episodes. If you're looking for a next step, we have some offerings around, evaluations for retention coaching, where we help your team, all the ways to services that can really help make you improve retention on a regular basis and take a lot of the principles that we've done, but start implementing them on a consistent, regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. And if you haven't done so, if you're interested, we did do, in our last series on SaaS Coach, we did a series focused on conversion. So kind of the two really important sides of the coin, right? Getting those customers, then keeping them. So if you enjoyed retention, go back, take a look at the conversion series. Our guidebook here, if you're watching live, not available just yet, but if you're watching this on a replay, good chance this will be available for download.
Right.
And again, we have upcoming some special episodes to wrap up and round out the series here in the next couple of weeks.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for visiting. We've got some lots of new and fun stuff coming up, so we'll be seeing you very soon.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye-bye.